Marilyn Strickland. Marilyn Strickland is a congresswoman. I wanted to return to the war in Iran. American troops are once again in harm's way in Iran. Revolutionary Guard says it is targeting the U.S. bases in retaliation for American strikes. The situation is once again escalating, even after both branches of Congress passed war power resolutions, and the president had to personally intervene to get Republican senators to switch their votes. Is this sustainable? How long can this president continue to carry on this conflict without getting real buy-in from the American people and Congress?
Well, at some point, the president is going to have to come up with a diplomatic solution to end this war and help end this war. And I want to point something out here. When a president typically decides to commit American troops to a war, there is a very somber primetime address to the American people. The case is made to Congress. He's usurped our authority, and they make the case for why this should happen. The Trump administration has refused to do any of this. No strategy, no exit plan, and really no improvement when it comes to the Mideast. They're more destabilized now. On top of that, it has cost about $150 billion, and the Pentagon has spent $30 billion alone. But here's the part of this I think it's really important for us to understand. It will cost the average American family $1,000 this year because of this war. The cost of energy, the cost of goods, everything is a complete disaster.
Now, while we're at war, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth continues what sure looks like a politically motivated reorganization of the Pentagon. Women and troops of color have had their promotions blocked, and in the past week, chaplains were stripped of their officer rank insignias just days after the department also cut the number of recognized religions from more than 200 to just 31. Does this kind of social experimentation make sense while we're in the middle of a major conflict?
It makes absolutely no sense, Rev. And, you know, I still remember the day when Pete Hegseth finally came to the House Armed Services Committee. And one of the first things he said was, DEI is dead. With a force where over 40% of those who are enlisted are people of color. He has come after promotions. He has come after people to fire them, and he claims this is a merit-based system. But I will tell you, the only requirement that Pete Hegseth has for his generals and people serving is that they are blindly loyal to Trump. It is a poor excuse of someone in this position. And ironically, he talks about people not being qualified because he says that's what DEI is about. He is the ultimate DEI hire. Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina actually said he regrets casting the vote in the Senate to confirm Pete Hegseth. He's unfit, he's unqualified, and he is compromising national and global security.
Now, you mentioned earlier a prominent Wall Street economist from the ratings company Moody's estimated last week that the Iran war has already cost each U.S. family roughly $1,000, and that number is only growing as we speak. Are the affordability issues and the war now linked in the lives of Americans?
Absolutely, Reverend. And, you know, we often talk about connecting the dots because we think this war in another part of the world has nothing to do with the cost of living. And you know this, when we are talking to people in the district across the country, they talk about affordability. But if the Strait of Hormuz is closed and the president keeps saying there's a peace deal, no, there's not. There's a peace deal. The cost of energy, the cost of food, the cost of goods, all those things are affected because of this war. So you can definitely connect the dots. And I think about what the American people care about right now. People just want to have their basic needs met. Housing, stable jobs, good schools, safe neighborhoods, health care that they can afford, retiring with dignity, and collecting the Social Security they've been paying into. And more importantly, Rev, they just want to live their lives in peace. People want to love their families, take care of each other, and just live what we call the American promise.
Now, before you go, I want to ask you about the World Cup and the unusual way it has been bringing together communities in your state. On Friday, Seattle hosted a match between Egypt and Iran on the opening day of the city's Pride Month celebration. There was some initial controversy when the two teams hailing from countries that criminalize homosexuality asked that FIFA avoid displays of LGBTQ support. Many fans ignored those requests and turned the event into a rainbow-tinted pride match. Nevertheless, the game went off without incident. What can an event like this teach us as we push to increase acceptance of LGBTQ people worldwide?
So generally speaking, Seattle and the metropolitan Seattle-Tacoma area, we have always been at the forefront of LGBTQ rights. And Pride is celebrated in Seattle in June, and that would happen with or without the World Cup. So we were happy to host the World Cup here, but that was not going to change our celebration of Pride. And I remind folks that, look, people have the right to express themselves. This is why we have the First Amendment in this country. Overall, people had a really, really nice time. And it's really delightful, Rev, to watch across the entire United States, people coming to visit the U.S. for the first time, being welcomed with open arms, enjoying the food, the culture, the history. And so I tell folks that watching the World Cup really reminds us that we all have shared humanity. And it's amazing to be proud of this country because there's a lot to be proud of right now, despite our challenges. So I'm just hoping that through the World Cup, we can all get to know each other, learn about each other, and just really show the whole world through the teams who are through the teams who've made it to the round of 32. Diversity is our strength. It's a good thing. It makes the world better.
All right. Thank you, Congresswoman Marilyn Strickland of the state of Washington.